For years, Heavy D and Diesel Dave looked like more than business partners. They were the faces of Diesel Brothers, two friends who built a truck empire from almost nothing. But behind the jokes, cameras, and massive builds, their partnership faced pressure that fans could not always see. So what really happened between the two Davids? And did fame change their friendship? The answer is more complicated than the show ever made it look. Chapter 1 begins with a friendship, not a television show. The two men first crossed paths at a church event for young singles in Utah. Heavy D, whose real name is Dave Sparks, invited David Diesel Dave Kiley to spend time with his friends at a nearby lake. Neither man knew that a simple invitation would become the beginning of a business partnership and, eventually, a television career. But their friendship became memorable for an unusual reason. During that early outing, Heavy D accidentally put gasoline into a diesel pickup. Diesel Dave helped fix a mistake, and the two began talking about their shared love of diesel trucks. That moment became part of the story. They would later tell about how diesel sellers began. At the time, there was no famous show. No cameras were following them. No audience was waiting for the next giant truck build. Heavy D was simply trying to build a life around machines and business. He had spent years learning about auto mechanics, welding, and fabrication. He also worked with heavy equipment and eventually started his own excavation business. Then, in 2008, he brought Diesel Dave into that business as his first employee and trusted friend. That decision would change both of their lives. The two eventually moved toward buying, building, and selling diesel trucks. What started as a small business idea grew into Diesel Sellers, a brand built around powerful trucks, custom work, and their larger-than-life personalities. And there was something important about their partnership. Heavy D was deeply involved in the business side and the building process, while Diesel Dave became one of the recognizable faces of the brand. Their different personalities worked surprisingly well together. But success was about to introduce a completely different kind of pressure. Their videos began attracting attention online. One truck stunt eventually caught the attention of comedian Jay Leno, leading to an appearance on The Tonight Show. Discovery later noticed the online material as well. Suddenly, the two friends who had started with trucks and a simple business idea were standing at the door of television fame. And that was when their friendship was about to face its biggest test yet. What began as a strange meeting between two truck lovers soon became something much bigger. Heavy D and Diesel Dave did not start with a television studio, a huge crew, or a famous brand. They started with a shared interest in diesel trucks and a willingness to take a risk. In 2008, Heavy D hired Diesel Dave as his first employee. At that point, Heavy D was already running a small excavation business, but the two friends were looking for a way to build something of their own. Their idea was simple: find used or broken-down diesel trucks, improve them, and sell them. That idea eventually became Diesel Sellers. But the business was not built in a perfect workshop, with everything they needed. They were learning as they went. They experimented with fabrication, worked on trucks, and began using the internet to show people what they were doing. Then they tried something that changed the game. They decided to give away a truck as a way to bring attention to their website. At the same time, they started posting funny videos and pranks involving the crew. According to Diesel Dave, the giveaway brought major traffic, while the videos began spreading online. Suddenly, their trucks were no longer just products. They had become entertainment. People were not only interested in what the two friends built, they wanted to watch Heavy D and Diesel Dave build it. That difference was enormous. In 2014, their growing online popularity helped lead to an appearance on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. Then Discovery became interested, and the Diesel Brothers television series eventually followed. But fame did not arrive overnight. In fact, Diesel Dave later said they did not immediately accept Discovery's offer. They reportedly waited for months because they thought the offer might be a scam. Eventually, they agreed to film a pilot, and their television journey began. This was the moment everything changed. Heavy D and Diesel Dave were no longer simply two friends trying to make a living from trucks. They were becoming a brand. And when a friendship becomes a business, a television show, and a public image all at once, the pressure can become very different. For the audience, it looked like two best friends having fun. Behind the scenes, however, they were also running businesses, managing a growing team, building massive trucks and dealing with the demands of television. So the real question was no longer whether Heavy D and Diesel Dave could become successful. It was whether their friendship could survive the success. The moment Diesel Brothers reached television, Heavy D and Diesel Dave stopped being known only inside the diesel truck world. They became television personalities. The Discovery series premiered in 2016 and followed the diesel sellers' crew as they bought, repaired, modified, and sold diesel trucks. Heavy D and Diesel Dave were at the center of the show, with their friends and business partners becoming part of the story too. For viewers, the formula was easy to understand. Big trucks, big personalities, crazy ideas, and plenty of chaos. But underneath the entertainment was a real business that had been growing for years. Heavy D became known for his bold ideas and leadership, while Diesel Dave became famous for his energy, humor, and truck-building skills. Their different personalities helped make the show work. One was often the person pushing the plan forward. The other could turn the plan into something people wanted to watch. That combination became one of the biggest reasons audiences connected with them. And then came the trucks themselves. The builds became larger, more creative, and more extreme. The company was no longer simply selling modified diesel trucks. It was creating a recognizable style. The Diesel Brothers name became bigger than the people who started it. But fame also brought something neither man could completely control. Attention. Every truck build could be judged. Every business decision could be questioned. And every mistake could become public. That is the part viewers often miss when they watch a successful television team. The cameras show the finished truck. They show the jokes. They show the celebration. But they do not always show the pressure that comes with keeping a business alive while millions of people are watching. Heavy D and Diesel Dave also became involved in philanthropic projects, including their Diesel Brothers for Kids efforts. Their public image was not only about trucks anymore. It was also about giving back and building a larger community around the brand. For a while, it seemed like the partnership had everything: a successful company, a hit television series, a loyal fan base, and two friends who had known each other long before cameras entered their lives. But the bigger their success became, the more complicated their public story became too. Legal disputes involving their businesses eventually brought even more attention to the Diesel Brothers name. In one major case, a federal judge ruled against the companies over violations involving modified diesel trucks and ordered substantial penalties and environmental remediation. The case became a serious public controversy surrounding the brand. And suddenly, the conversation around Heavy D and Diesel Dave was no longer only about entertainment. Fans began asking bigger questions. What was happening behind the business? Was their friendship still as strong as it appeared on television? Or had fame, money, and pressure changed the relationship? If you enjoy discovering the hidden stories behind the world's biggest names, subscribe now, because the next chapter goes deeper into the conflict surrounding the Diesel Brothers brand. Because the story was about to move far beyond trucks. And this time, the cameras were not the only thing watching. For years, the public story was simple. Heavy D and Diesel Dave were friends who had built something together. But as the Diesel Brothers brand became bigger, the pressure around it grew too. The television series was built around friendship, business, and huge truck projects. In an early interview, the two men described their partnership as a real working relationship. Diesel Dave said he had freedom to help with builds, videos, sales, and social media, while Heavy D described him as a person who got people excited about what they were doing. That detail matters, because it shows that their roles were not exactly the same. Heavy D was heavily connected to the business and building side. Diesel Dave became an important public face and helped create attention around the brand. And for a while, that difference seemed to make the partnership stronger. But then came the problems. The Diesel Brothers businesses became involved in a major legal battle over diesel emissions modifications. The case was brought under the Clean Air Act and eventually resulted in court findings, financial penalties, and restrictions involving the companies and several people connected to the show. This became one of the biggest controversies surrounding the Diesel Brothers name. But there is an important point that often gets lost when people tell this story. A legal battle involving the businesses does not automatically prove that Heavy D and Diesel Dave ended their friendship. That distinction matters because online rumors can quickly turn a complicated business story into a simple breakup story. The show itself eventually ended after 6 seasons, with its final episodes airing in 2022. And once the camera stopped, fans naturally began wondering what happened next. Were Heavy D and Diesel Dave still working together? Had the friendship changed? Or was the relationship simply moving into a new stage? Those questions became even louder as Heavy D continued building his own online presence and taking on new projects. In 2025, Heavy D faced another major legal development connected to the long-running emissions case. He was arrested after a federal judge found him in contempt of court over violations and outstanding obligations connected to the case. His attorneys strongly disputed the situation and said no crime had been charged. For fans watching from the outside, it was easy to connect all these events and assume there had been a dramatic personal split. But the public evidence tells a more careful story. There is plenty of documentation about the businesses, the television show, and the legal problems. There's far less solid evidence proving that Heavy D and Diesel Dave had a secret personal feud that destroyed their friendship. And that may be the biggest twist of all. Because sometimes the story people want to hear is not the same as the story the evidence can prove. Everyone faces moments when success becomes complicated. Maybe you have experienced a time when something that once felt simple suddenly became difficult. Even people who seem successful from the outside can face pressure that viewers never see. And for Heavy D and Diesel Dave, the real question became something deeper. Did they actually fall apart? Or did the world simply stop seeing the partnership the way it once did? That is where the story gets even more interesting. The biggest problem with this story is also the most important one. There is no solid public evidence proving that Heavy D and Diesel Dave had a dramatic personal falling out. The internet has produced plenty of titles claiming there was a secret split, a major betrayal, or a hidden argument. But when the documented history is examined closely, the picture is much less clear. In their 2016 interview with Diesel Army, Heavy D and Diesel Dave still spoke about their friendship as something that had started years before television. They described meeting at a church gathering and explained how their shared love of diesel trucks eventually led to Diesel Sellers. That matters because their relationship existed long before Diesel Brothers became a television brand. So what changed? The business grew, the television show grew, and eventually, their public lives began moving in different directions. Heavy D continued building a large online presence around trucks, heavy equipment, and other projects. Diesel Dave also remained connected to the diesel world, but the two were no longer constantly appearing together in the way viewers had become used to seeing them on television. That change alone was enough to create rumors. Fans had watched the two men together for years. When they saw less of that partnership, many naturally assumed something terrible must have happened. But absence is not proof of a feud. And there is another important piece of the story. The legal trouble surrounding the Diesel Brothers' businesses involved both Heavy D and Diesel Dave, along with other people and companies connected to the show. The federal case concerned alleged violations of emissions laws, and court actions continued for years. In 2025, Heavy D was arrested after being found in contempt over violations of court orders connected to that case. His lawyer said no crime had been charged and argued that the arrest was unjust. Yet none of that proves that Heavy D and Diesel Dave personally turned against each other. That distinction is easy to miss. A business can experience legal problems. A television show can end. A partnership can change. And two longtime friends can simply stop working together as closely as they once did. Those things do not automatically mean the friendship was destroyed. So when people ask, what really happened between Heavy D and Diesel Dave? The most responsible answer is surprisingly simple. The public record shows a long friendship, a successful business partnership, television fame, major business and legal pressures, and eventually less of the duo being seen together. It does not clearly document the dramatic secret feud that many online videos claim. And perhaps that is the real lesson behind their story. Sometimes fame does not destroy a friendship in one explosive moment. Sometimes life simply changes. People build different projects. Businesses evolve. Television shows end. And the audience only sees the part that happens in front of the camera. But Heavy D and Diesel Dave's story did not end when Diesel Brothers ended. In fact, what happened after the cameras stopped may tell us more about their legacy than anything that happened on the show. When Diesel Brothers ended its television run, it looked like the end of an era, but it was not the end of the Diesel Brothers story. The show ran for 6 seasons, from 2016 through 2022, turning Heavy D, Diesel Dave, and their crew into recognizable names far beyond the diesel truck community. And even after television moved on, the brand continued to live online. Heavy D remained active with automotive content, while the Diesel Brothers name continued appearing in projects and reruns. In 2026, Diesel Brothers was still being listed on television schedules, showing that the series had not simply disappeared from public view. But perhaps the most important change came from the legal battle that had followed the company for years. In February 2026, Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment announced a settlement with Dave Sparks and his defending companies. According to the organization, Sparks and the companies had paid their outstanding fees and costs, while restrictions concerning federally required emission systems remained in place. That brought a long chapter of the story closer to an ending. And it also gives us a clearer way to look back at Heavy D and Diesel Dave. Their story was never simply about two friends who became famous. It was about what happens when a small friendship becomes a business, then a television show, then a public brand watched by millions. They started with trucks. They built a company. They found an audience. They became television stars. And eventually, they had to deal with the difficult side of success too. The biggest lesson may be that the internet often wants a simple ending. Friends become enemies. Partners have a secret fight. One person walks away. But real life is rarely that clean. Based on a documented public record, there is no reliable evidence showing that Heavy D and Diesel Dave secretly destroyed their friendship in some dramatic confrontation. What we can confirm is that their careers, businesses, and public lives changed over time. And perhaps that is the truth fans were searching for all along. The cameras showed two friends building giant trucks. But behind the cameras were two people trying to manage business, fame, pressure, and life. Their partnership helped create one of the most recognizable truck brands in reality television. And whether they stand side by side again on television or continue on separate paths, the work they created together remains part of their story. Because sometimes the most powerful ending is not a shocking feud. It is simply understanding what really happened. The world saw Heavy D and Diesel Dave become famous, but their greatest achievement may have happened before anyone knew their names. They turned a friendship and a shared passion into something millions of people could watch. And that is why, years after the show began, people are still asking the same question. What really happened between Heavy D and Diesel Dave? The answer is not the dramatic secret many headlines promise. It is a story about friendship, ambition, fame, pressure, and change. And maybe that makes it even more human. But this is not the only celebrity story where success came with a hidden cost. In our next documentary, we reveal the complicated journey of another famous partnership that looked perfect on camera until everything changed behind the scenes.